Hello, 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 and welcome to a brand new episode of Three Drams. This is episode 25, and as always, I'm your host, Potstilled Matt from potstill.com. And we have a very exciting episode for you this evening. For the first time, we are doing a takeover of Three Drams. So we're going to be joined by Ireland Ambassador for Bushmills, Lauren McMullan, excuse me. And I am delighted that we're going to be trying a range of really interesting whiskies from Bushmills as we round out the year that has been 2022. Of course, let us know in the comments section where you guys are joining us from. I know we always have a lot of our regulars, but of course, if you are new to Three Drams, let us know as well, and we will say hello. It is always great to see all of the people around the world that are joining us for Three Drams, so that is fantastic. I do always want to say a very big thank you to the guys at Three Drams and Irish Malts, particularly John and Donovan, who is the masterminds, and their team there, the masterminds behind Three Drams, and get all of these tasting kits with Irish whiskey all across the world every month. As I always say, I just do the easy part of talking to all of you guys and enjoying some fantastic whiskeys. So do let us know where you're joining us from. Do let us know what you're thinking of these whiskeys as we go along. We will note that there is as I said, the three whiskeys that we're trying are all from Bushmills, and there are some really exciting casks. So I do want to say to check out each of them as we go along and save a little bit. It's just my tip of each whiskey as we go along, so you can taste them against each other after you've had all three and really kind of evaluate which ones you like. But it's a really exciting time to have a Bushmills takeover, obviously the first real kind of all brand takeover of Three Drams, and I'm delighted to be doing it here tonight. And I am seeing some comments coming in already and seeing a slightly chilly, always sunny California. Looking forward to this one, Gary. I am too. So listen, I know that nobody's really here to hear me talk about anything really. We're always here to listen to the flavor makers and creators, and in this case Lauren. So I want to say a very big welcome to Lauren. So let me bring her in. Lauren, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi Matt. Hi everyone. I am great. How are you?
To be honest, I am having a great evening. So it's miserable outside, but I'm inside with three what I'm assuming, I've had two of these whiskeys before, but I have not had all three, which is my favorite way to do Three Drams, because everyone gets to have my candid on camera reactions to tasting these whiskeys as we go.
Absolutely. Which one is it you haven't tried?
I haven't had the Pomerol yet.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that.
We'll get it, as you say, we'll get a live cam reaction from you.
Exactly. We will at least at some point. So where in the world are you joining us from? And I suppose because it's not your first time on Three Drams, but for those out there that don't know you, give us a quick rundown of who you are and the wonderful brand you work with.
Absolutely. Well, I have a heater at my feet, so that might give an indication as to where I am. I am tonight joining from beautiful North Coast, County Antrim coast. My house is about 20 minutes away from the old Bushmills distillery itself, so extremely close by. So yeah, everyone, I'd say I know a few names and a few faces on here, but I am the Bushmills brand ambassador. So I have been working with the brand now. It'll be 9 years in March overall. So I started off in 2014 working in the distillery itself as a tour guide, a whiskey taster, did a little bit of everything in between that as well. And then almost 4 years ago, I joined the team at Proximo Spirits as the All Ireland brand ambassador. So massive part of my role is the on-trade, so looking after the on-trade all across the island, really spreading the gospel of Bushmills essentially to anyone who will listen, but mainly bar managers, bartenders, obviously host consumer events, podcasts, wonderful podcasts like this, and yeah, a little bit of everything in between. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
There you go. And I mean, great that you're from just what do you say, 2 minutes down the road from the distillery?
20, yeah. So
listen, no, forget it. I thought it was 2 minutes. That's what I wanted
to add another couple of minutes onto that.
Yeah.
It's so funny though. I always used to say to people as a joke, like depending which way the wind's blowing, you can nearly smell the fermentation from the distillery. But No, it's very, very close by indeed.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. And this isn't particularly about Bushmills, but that smell of distilleries invokes a lot for people. And obviously, we both work in the whiskey industry, but none of my family do or have worked in the industry. But I found this out a few years ago. My dad brought me to his father's childhood home, my grandfather. And where he brought me was one of the Powers houses. And I said to him, I was like, what's the story? How did we end up living in Powers houses, like right beside the distillery? And my dad was like, I haven't a clue. We have nothing to do with Powers, like whatever. And then a couple of years later, I was on RTE Archives, and it was about Powers in the 70s when my dad would have been brought to his grandparents there. And I think the first line was like, all around James's Street, you can smell the lovely smell of sweet mash. Yeah. And literally, like, my dad just got like transported to 1970s.
The smells just came back.
And that was it. And he's like, I've no idea what you're talking about. I don't even know where the distillery is. And he just got landed back in memory lane with the smell of the mash. So I'm sure there's lots of people that would characterize your area with that smell, 100%. Whether they know it or don't.
100%. And like they always say as well that like smell is the biggest like kind of sense of emotion and nostalgia, isn't it? It's always the smell that's a really, really powerful, kind of indicator of memories and things. So I can imagine how you felt actually. It's one of those smells that you wish you could bottle it and transport it and bring it with you to taste things.
Exactly. I do want to say a very big hello to Barry Cullen, who's dropped into our comments here. He's the first timer tuning into 3 Drams, and he's coming in from Belfast. So very welcome to you, Barry.
Very welcome, Barry. Absolutely.
Yeah, delighted to have. Usually first timers are shy in the comment section, but he was straight in. And then of course you got John Fleming down in Carryout in Killarney. One of the greatest off licenses and off license groups in Ireland. And I have 2 local off licenses and one's a carryout. So it's always nice to pop in and see what are on offer. Always some great spirits in there. But look, I understand we've lots to talk about. As I said, we have 3 great whiskeys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the first whiskey here. So that we can crack open a bottle, have it in the glass, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about Bushmills and what this is, because I know people aren't going to wait that long to put whiskey in the glass. So
no, people, as you say, they're here for the liquid, Matt. They're not here for us, unfortunately.
Exactly. All right. So this is Dram Ever 1, number 1. Bushmill 16, opening with an absolute banger.
Absolutely. I'm pouring myself the best noise ever is the opening of a bottle of whiskey. There we are.
There you go. I left you silent for that one.
Thank you.
So two things. One, people will know Bushmill 16 because for many years it was kind of illustriously difficult to find in a lot of the markets because people keep buying it all the time. Secondly, you have a new rebrand or a refresh with the products, which first of all I love. But can you show us the punt? Because I love the punt on these bottles. The base.
Oh, the base. Sorry, I thought you said the cork.
No. Which is a lovely throw, kind of tie in with the Giant's Causeway there as well. Obviously,
I love it, and it's one of those little details that you probably wouldn't notice unless you actually were, examining the bottle. But I think I love it. It's one of my favorite parts. Unless
you're weird like me and looking.
Unless you're weird like us,
yeah, exactly.
It's like that you can't turn off the marketer head, can you? Sometimes.
Yeah.
No, sorry. I thought you said you love the cork, but I also love the cork as well.
I do. I like that. The whole product refresh, I think, just on a side note, is I think absolutely beautiful. A really nice elevation of the product. You haven't lost the kind of the square bottle recognizable shape, but it's very premiumized from where it was. I think is a great elevation. Anyway, as I said, that's the weird marketers in us that I stare at product refreshes all the time. But yes,
one of those things. So it's a bit like Marmite. I think sometimes people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. But I think it's brilliant, and the main reason behind it was just to create that little bit more of a premium feel for the malts. Yeah, because the blends like the likes of the original Blackbush, the cask finishes, they're staying in the previous bottle, but it's just the malts, the core range, obviously they're going to this shape. So
well, it's funny because it was around this time last year. It was the end of October when it was launching, and it was all very hush hush, and there was kind of rumblings about it. And I was at a whiskey show in Amsterdam, and the importer for Bushmills just had them on the stand, and it was one of the guys from Waterford and myself rocked up to the stand, and we were like, "What are these?" And your man was like, "Take pictures, have a drink, don't worry about it." We're like, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we were like, I don't know.
Take photos.
I don't think it didn't care. I don't think he knew there was like an embargo on the it hadn't even dropped yet. So we knew something was coming, but not what. And he was like, "Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, take pictures, put it online. Don't worry about it." And we were like,
you were snapping away.
Well, we took pictures, and the two of us were savvy enough to know that not to put it online. So I think I sent it. I sent it to a couple of people in Bushmills, and I was like, "Hey, nice new bottle," and they were like, "The hell did you get this?" Don't worry about it.
You could blackmail people, like I won't release it. Don't worry unless you do.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the things I could do to your embargo right now. Anyway, so Bushmills 16, Dram number 1. We have it here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this? Obviously, a fan favorite, a core range.
100%.
What are we sticking our noses into?
So I think with obviously a couple of the drams, the final 2 drams that we're going to be tasting are the Causeway collection, the Irish releases from this year. So obviously the new releases from Bushmills are brilliant. We'll come on to those in a few seconds and why they're brilliant and how anticipated they were. But I think it's so important to remind yourself of the classics, the classic malts, the core range, because the likes of the 16 and the components and the breakdown of the whiskey essentially laid the foundations and the building blocks for what was possible with the Causeway collection, which will make more sense as we get into it. And I think in the midst of new releases, you go back to the classics and you remind yourself why they are classics and why they're so great essentially as well. So obviously all 3 whiskies tonight are single malts. Of course, Bushmills being a single malt distillery, it's what we're renowned for. It's producing beautiful single malt whiskies. So the 16-year-old was released back in 1997. It is a 3-wood whiskey, 40% ABV. So we're starting at 40 and making our way up. So a 3-wood whiskey, it ages primarily for just over 16 years in ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks. Then we marry those 2 and we finish for at least 9 months in port wine casks. As you said, Matt, it's such a classic drop. It's certainly one of my favorites within the core range of Bushmills. Do you know what it reminds me of? And people always laugh at me when I say this, but we always say whiskey's subjective, and saying about how smell is the most powerful kind of point of memory. Blackcurrant wine guns. I've always said this. See what I mean? Everyone thinks I'm mad. But that's what it reminds me of. Those beautiful kind of juicy fruits, the blackcurrants, cherries, those are rich dark fruit notes are so evident on the nose.
And of course, in the comments, if you're drinking along and savoring along with us, let us know what you're tasting as well.
I've just seen Ken say greetings from a wet Cork. It's extremely wet up in the north coast as well. I'm hoping the internet stays.
I think it's wet everywhere.
I think so too. But yes, on the palate, then you get that kind of that intermingling of the allspice, the hint of dark chocolate coming in there as well. And on the finish, it's a little bit of the dry wood and that port sweetness in there as well. It's just such a beautiful whiskey.
Well, for me, it's one that always jumps out of the glass. Like there's so many flavors going on.
100%. You leave this 10 minutes and you go back to it, and absolutely you'll find something different. But as you say, it's probably the nicest punch in the face you'll ever receive. Is that big, bold, punchy flavors coming in there? Did you just put it in your hand? Yeah,
I did. It's fun because in actually on the nose, a lot of those big kind of juicy fruits are evident, and underneath it, I could smell kind of the kind of core Bushmills DNA, that toasted kind of vanilla note.
100%.
And I just want to see, and when I rub it in my hands, I lose some of those kind of those lighter esters, and it gets into like the real like malty core Bushmills DNA, which is quite nice.
Absolutely. I always say that kind of like the Bushmills DNA, that triple distilled malt, we characterize that as being very fruity. So you do get those kind of green apple, the pears from that spirit, from the B3D, as we call it at the distillery. And you're absolutely right. It's going to run through the heart and body of every single Bushmills whiskey. You actually get a lovely note of green apple from the Pomerol, which we'll come on to. Guy, toffee pop biscuit. That's a great note. Toffee pops. I'm going to want a toffee pop now after this.
You see, the great thing for me is like when you say blackcurrant wine gums, and then also when we're talking about toffee pop biscuits, you know, people sometimes, like what you said, people laugh at you with blackcurrant wine gums. That's a compound flavor, and compound flavors are not wrong. You can just dissect a compound flavor.
Exactly.
So like with toffee pops, you're going to get that maltiness from the biscuit. You're going to get the actual like kind of burnt sugar toffee.
Yeah, the sweetness.
There's also usually an icing in there as well to elevate that that sugar. With blackcurrant wine gums, I discreetly Googled the ingredients of blackcurrant wine gums, and it's like vanilla. It's like vanilla, blackcurrant essence, and like fructose.
Yeah.
And air and water. So you're into, again, multiple facets. It's like I used to get fruit salad chewits. It was a particular whiskey I used to get this fruit salad note, and it was what I always remembered was the chewits. And I Googled what the ingredients were, and it was raspberry, pineapple, vanilla.
There you are.
And then so you're able to
little pink and yellow ones.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I know exactly which one. Yeah. That's so interesting. I wonder what you were doing there. You were like secretly Googling.
I was like, you said it, and I was like, fuck, and we have a look at this, it's definitely going to have elements of it. And I like this. Sam Grimes coming in saying, fun fact, several friends got first homes and they're swapping Bushmills as housewarming gifts.
Oh, brilliant.
I mean, it's brilliant as long as they're all as premium as each other. You know, if there's a Causeway collection and a 21, and then maybe someone rocks in with a Red Bush. Someone throws
in a ball of Blackbush, yeah.
Well, hang on now. Blackbush is a bottle we'll all have on the back shelf anyway.
We do.
We're not. I'll have not a bad word said about Blackbush.
It's my go-to. Like you just cannot beat it for price versus quality. It's just such a brilliant whiskey. A Blackbush and a pint of stout. That's my bar order. So if anyone sees me anywhere across Ireland, you know what to buy now. All black or red bush, fair enough, Sam.
See, at least they're consistent.
Exactly, absolutely.
But yeah, so if I suppose for people who are diving into this for the first time, I suppose Bushmills 16 is a very big, you know, it's so well known, it's so famous. You know, I presume you're going to find it in most well-stocked bars across the island. Are we going to find it, I suppose, outside of Ireland, across Europe as well? Like, you know, is there a general wide availability of Bushmills 16?
Yeah, well, as you said, in Ireland, absolutely, you'll get it from all the main kind of locations: Irish malts, Celtic whiskey, carry out. Where's John? You'll get it from all the main, absolutely, all the main kind of wholesalers outlets in Ireland. But yeah, absolutely. A really big market for us is Poland. It's a huge market for us. Really, really significant growth there, which is fantastic. And as you know, Matt, we kind of experienced that over in Warsaw a few months ago.
A few weeks ago.
Literally feels like forever ago. So yeah, no, absolutely. You'll find it in even likes of Bulgaria is a really significant growth market for us too. So 100% you'll find it widespread in Europe, definitely.
John saying the Causeway collection been a great rediscovery back into Bushmills. So
100%. Yeah, I feel like obviously we'll come on to this a little bit more in a few minutes, but I feel like the Causeway collections where everything that people had been asking Bushmills to do for many, many years. I know even when I worked in the distillery, any tastings you did outside of that in recent years, the number one question was, when are Bushmills releasing, one, any more single malts, and two, cask strength single malts? So I think the Causeway collection in its entirety was just exactly what our kind of, consumers wanted. So 100%. It was so nice for us as well to kind of see that passion for the brand kind of be reignited amongst so many people. As you said, John, it brought you back into Bushmills, which is so great to hear. Sleeping Giant is exactly how I described us. You know, we have over 400,000 casks on site at the distillery. We're currently using 30 different types of cask within that as well. So I think people knew what we were capable of, and there was that little bit of frustration. I think it's very fair to say. So yeah, it's been brilliant, and it even injected us with a little bit more brand passion, because we had something new to talk about and something new to let people try. So you're absolutely right.
Exactly, and it kind of coincided, I suppose, with the new life, with new ownership, and do you all have mandatory Spanish lessons now?
Well, funny you should say that, because that's how I actually got into the distillery, was through studying languages at university. And obviously Bushmills being on the County Antrim coast, 2 minutes away from the Giant's Causeway, you have a lot of international visitors. So that was one of the main reasons that got me into the distillery. And then I more or less just never left the brand after that. So not really using the degree as much, but I mean, all for a great cause. So
that's great. You got into whiskey for talking languages, and I got into it for talking shite, and here the two of us are now.
Look where we are
now. Exactly. Well, while I'm going to begin to pour Dram in Ragon number 2, I'm going to pull up the name of it here, and this is what we're trying the 2002 Vermouth cask. Why don't you give us a little rundown about the new distillery, for those who want to know something about the distillery, and then I'm going to pull this back down, and excuse me.
Absolutely. No, you're fine.
Dram number 2. So while we're filling our glasses, why don't you tell us about the new distillery, and I'm going to have a little nose of this here.
Absolutely. So the new distillery, it's fair to say it's not something you just with that reaction. It's not something we've really kind of officially, I guess, if for want of a better word, spoken about.
Sorry, new distillery. What new distillery? Anyway.
No, I think it's spread pretty wide and far now, to be fair.
It was on Whiskey Cast. If it's on Whiskey Cast, I'm going to ask you about it, all right?
So the new distillery, it's still, of course, on the original site. We haven't moved anywhere. You know, we've always produced whiskey on the North Coast. We're not changing that. But the new distillery, essentially, we're producing about 5 million litres of spirit annually. And the new distillery will allow us to double that capacity. So we all know the growth of the Irish whiskey industry has been incredible in the past few years, more so, obviously, past 10 years, but I'd say even more so in the past sort of 5. So it kind of shows you where Bushmills fits into that growth as well with the new distillery. So we started construction 2020. So obviously with the C word, which we shall not mention, there are a few kind of delays along the way, but they are distilling in it. It just isn't open to the public as of yet. But it's very much there. It's absolutely beautiful. We cannot wait to bring people to it, to show people it. It's sensational. It really, really is. And one of the really kind of things that stood out for me with the community in Bushmills and the village itself was not once did any member of that village take a photo of the new distillery when it was being built. They allowed us to completely have the privacy to build it ourselves and kind of talk about it when we were ready, which I think is really nice. It kind of shows that community spirit around the village, which is great. So yes, that is happening. We'll hopefully be talking about it soon. Yes, John, new stills, absolutely. So the last time I spoke to Alex Thomas, our master blender, as we all know, she is an absolute superstar. She was saying that what they are doing at the minute is essentially trying to get the character from the new stills and the new distillery to match that of the old distillery, for one, if you like. So yes, there are new stills. Absolutely, there are 10.
10 new stills.
Mm-hmm.
Casual 10 stills.
But yes, it's wonderful.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about Dram number 2 here? I'm going to pull the image back up. So this is the 2022 Causeway Vermouth cask.
Yeah, so we'll do a little reminder, I guess, of the Causeway collection as a whole. First of all, we have touched upon it obviously a few minutes ago. So the Causeway collection was initially launched back in October 2020, right in the middle of COVID. That was the inaugural releases, and each year we release a certain quantity of whiskies into our key global markets. But we obviously always start with the home market, with the Irish market. And we try to keep the most unique and most special releases for the home market as well. Of course, you've got to honor and respect your home. So the Causeway collection has been inspired by the home of Bushmills, of course, along the Causeway coast. With our close proximity to the Giant's Causeway as well, it's become very much a part of the brand identity. And all of the whiskies are cask strength and non-chill filtered, which I think was a very welcome release for a lot of people, which is brilliant. And the casks that we're using and the casks that we're releasing as part of the Causeway collection are very unique casks. They're very rare casks that are either a global first or a first for us as a brand. So these are releases that you've never seen before from us, which in itself provided new challenges, which is great. And it provided something really exciting as well. So each year we had different releases. Obviously, we had the 2020 releases, the inaugural release. We had last year, and then these two are this year's exclusive Irish releases. So you physically cannot pick up a bottle of these whiskies unless you are on this island, which is great as well. So the first Dram, we're moving up in ABV strength here. So this is 48.2. This is the 2002 Vermouth cask finish. I think you showed the bottle there, Matt, but I have one beside me here as well. You can just about see it with the light. So this is the 2002 Vermouth cask finish. So Vermouth is, of course, an aromatized fortified wine. It's flavored with various botanicals, roots, herbs, the main one of those being wormwood. And it hails from the Piedmont region of Italy. That's probably a terrible pronunciation, but Turin is the capital. And it is a dry white vermouth. So this is a 20-year-old single malt whiskey. It has spent the first 18 years in bourbon and sherry casks. And then we finished for 2 years in the ex-vermouth casks. This was also a world first. It was the first time a whiskey had ever been aged in a vermouth cask as well. So vermouth was initially created to be a medicinal spirit. A lovely parallel with whiskey there, of course, as well. But it is very herbal and it is very medicinal. So what we wanted to do here, of course, using a cask as unique as a vermouth cask, you want to ensure you get the Bushmills DNA, that triple distilled malt and all the characters that go with that. You want to honor that, ensure that it still shines through in the whiskey, but you also want to get the flavors coming through from the vermouth itself as well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to say a little sláinte and I'll cheers the camera.
Sláinte? Absolutely.
Anyone who's sipping along with us, feel free to join us.
Oh no, you have tried this one, haven't you?
I have tried this one, but
it's
so juicy and it's incredibly vibrant. There's only a little bit of that kind of wormwood bitterness at the back of the palate, at the back of the palate and towards the finish. But it's so big and bright and juicy.
I find loads of kind of fruit cake notes coming through.
Give me 1 second. You tell us a little bit more about that. I literally just have to grab my dog. She's making a nuisance behind the camera. So you can tell us about the whiskey and I'll be back in 1 second.
Please bring your dog. Like, I don't think anyone would object to that. The two greatest things in life are whiskey and dogs. I remember, I think it was last year, but last June time. Oh, bless. Look at her. I love dogs. I'm that one person at the party that will be on the floor with the dog. That's me. But I think it was last June. I was doing a tasting outside and someone brought their dog and I was like, this sets the standard for every other bartender training I do. Please bring your dogs. If you ever come to a tasting of mine, please do. But yes, back to the whiskey. Causeway was your favorite. John, I would say mine, out of all of the releases, was probably, I agree with you, the 2008 Muscatel. It was just such a sensational whiskey. It blew me away. Or also the 1995 Marsala. What about you, Matt, out of the ones you've tried?
The Muscatel was one that it was a special place in the heart, you know.
100%, yeah.
So we did a showcase of that when it was first released with the 1995 and the Muscatel with Helmut Holland. when she was still the
yes, of
the blender.
course. That's right.
But yeah, this is again on the nose. It's just big and juicy, fruity. That underlying, like again, actually back to the kind of like tropical fruits I was talking about before.
I find it's like mandarin oranges, like very, very sweet oranges. And then it goes into that big burst of the fruitcake notes. Gordon, yes, absolutely feels more 58 than 48. Because of there was a lot of interaction with the whiskey and the vermouth. So you do get so many of those kind of really bold notes and flavors coming through in that as well. So you're absolutely right. It does feel a little bit of a higher ABV than it is.
I think, for that the slight herbaceousness, the slight bitterness on the back of the palate kind of gives you that faux alcohol sensation, if that makes sense.
100%, absolutely. And as well, vermouth obviously is a key ingredient in a lot of classic whiskey cocktails as well, which is obviously. And you, Matt, you're fond of what's your favorite? It's a Manhattan you drink, is it? No, or a.
My like go-tos well, my number one is an Irish coffee, but I'm a old fashioned whiskey sour or a Gold Rush. They're all like 3 ingredient whiskey cocktails.
Simple. I would be an old fashioned. I know there's been a lot of uproar, that's not the right word, commotion around Negronis at the minute, as I'm sure you've probably seen, but
with Prosecco in them, or
with a little Spagliato, yes. Oh my goodness, my whole feed has been taken over by Negroni Spagliatos. No, I'm more of a Belvardier girl myself, I have to say.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is I'm an easy one to please, and what Lauren's kind of referring to is when we were in Warsaw recently. I am one of those annoying customers that just let the bartender pick when I'm drinking, because if I don't do that, I will literally have the same 3 cocktails just in perpetuity, and letting the bartender pick with no restraints. I just tell them to make their favorite cocktail, and I get to try all these like cool and crazy cocktails from around the world. The amount is funny though. The amount of times, like I used to be a cocktail bartender. That question is like terrible, because they have no idea what I like. I'm like, I always tell them like the only thing I don't want is chartreuse. Go nuts. The amount of bartenders that give me pisco cocktails, is insane.
Yeah.
So that I don't know why, it just seems to be like I don't know. At least for a while, it was a big bartender thing. I have a friend of mine in Philadelphia called Seamus Banning, great Irish name for an American. But he was formerly Powers ambassador and is currently the Tullamore Dew ambassador for Pennsylvania. So he's my old job there. And when he was a very high class cocktail bartender, I walked in one night and did that to him. I said, "Make me whatever you want," and he poured me a Tully Rocks and told me to stop asking difficult questions. So it works sometimes, doesn't work other times. But yeah, obviously the base of many cocktail have a lot of vermouth.
Absolutely. Negronis, Belvardiers, Manhattans, yeah. And obviously the kind of growth in cocktails has brought a new wave of whiskey drinkers into the realm as well, which is fantastic. I think, it's brilliant that we're kind of moving towards that direction, that people are seeing that whiskey can actually be a really versatile spirit, which is fantastic. But I'm with you. I love an old fashioned. An old fashioned is hard to beat. I was in the Marion Hotel in Dublin last week for an event, and I had one of the nicest Sexton old fashions I have ever tasted. Genuinely, it was beautiful.
Obviously, the Sexton being a sister brand of Bushmills.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You drop that in.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a couple of first timers in this evening. I want to make sure that the Bushmills ambassador isn't just randomly talking about a different brand.
But another brand.
Let me tell you about my favorite Jameson memory.
They'll be like, is this where they all go, really?
Yeah, exactly. So fantastic.
Do we have any more verdicts on vermouth? I see a few comments coming in there.
We've had a few, and they kind of pop in at different places from different different avenues. Interesting. I love this. Sam Grimes said he got into old fashions from Dom Draper Mad Men. First of all, dapper incarnate. But this is huge, and it's funny. I talk about this all the time to people that'll listen. So usually people like you, Lauren, and not people on a live stream. The world of cinema and TV has done immense good for whiskey. So the likes of Don Draper and Mad Men has iconicized whiskey as this like high-powered, suave drink. In Japan, they had their own version. It wasn't Mad Men, but equivalent of Mad Men, and they drank Suntory whiskey in it like every third scene. And that was kind of the genesis of the whiskey popularity boom in Japan that cut off supply to America. And then you tell Americans they can't have it. So then the Americans wanted it and it became massive. But it's funny because this has such a big impact, and things that I'm sure you do the same. When I see whiskey in TV and movies, I'm always like peeking to try to see what brand it is or whatever.
Or like what's on the back bar. Yeah.
And it's incredibly impactful because things like that, because it's presented that way, it can build that interest and rapport, and has driven a huge amount of people to try and drink old fashions. But interesting on the flip side, I'm about 25 years behind the curve, and I'm currently binging Supernatural for the first time.
I've never watched it myself, actually.
I have discovered it is an enormous cult following. But it's interesting because they drink whiskey all of the time, but they use it as like a crutch. So they have like horrible days, and then they drink whiskey, which is like a damaging connotation for if there was one brand or a one style drink, it would likely have a kind of negative impact. Women in TV very rarely drink whiskey unless it's a crutch, if that makes sense.
I get that.
So the presentation can matter so much and drive interest. The drive interest that way very easily. I'm trying to think. There was a movie about wine in the States, and I'm gonna half-ass this, but I cannot remember the name of this movie. But basically, one of the main characters in it, they're on like a stag do, and they're doing all the wines of like Napa Valley, and one guy is like a wine like expert, and the rest are just like fair weather wine fans. And I'm gonna get the varietal wrong, but basically in the movie, I'm going to say Pinot Noir, and he just lambastes Pinot Noir. He's like, Pinot Noir is dirt. And it was, at the time, was the most popular wine in the States, and he crushed like 4 million cases of sales. He killed them over the next like 2 years. And it had an enormous sideways. Yes, there you go. It had a devastating effect on the wine sales of I think it was Pinot Noir, but I haven't seen that movie in a long time. But it had an
Merlot.
Was it Merlot that he wanted? Because he wanted to drink one varietal and he hated the other, and the varietal he hated destroyed the case sales, like literally across the United States.
It's insane the effect of popular culture and what it can do to brands and to spirits. Like, I mean, look at even Peaky Blinders more recently.
Yeah,
I'm drinking a whiskey. Like, look what that did as well.
I also love that we, as a country, were given ownership of Peaky Blinders when it had nothing. They had Irish Roma roots, fine, sure, but like how we keep benefits of Peaky Blinders is fantastic. I won't go into it.
I thought I lost you there, Matt. There was a wee bit of a lag there with you. I thought I lost you, but you're back.
No, there we go. Look. Anyway, lag aside and movie references aside, it's probably time to jump onto our third whiskey. So how about we? Exactly. So dram number 3, if we're a tree, we have the 2012 Pomerol cask. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what a Pomerol is?
I was just cleansing my palate there. Apologies. So this is the 2012 Pomerol cask finish. I'm pouring my dram here as well with you all. So if we have any red wine drinkers that are listening, I've got the bottle here as well, of course. If we have any red wine drinkers, you're going to love this. First of all, the color. Like, look at the color. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like a rose gold, really rich gold. Beautiful. So Pomerol is the smallest of the French wine regions, the Bordeaux wine appellations. It's barely even a village. I think it has a church, and the houses are kind of nestled among the vineyard. So a very small, very quaint part of the world. The primary grape used to produce Pomerol wine is Merlot. So about 95% of the grapes in this region are Merlot. But Pomerol is home to some of the most expensive and some of the most sought after, there we are, some of the most expensive and the most sought after red wines in the world. But they deliver very intense but very refined aromas of wild berries, actually, which you really, really get on the nose of this whiskey. So this is a little bit of a higher ABV than the Vermouth. This is 54.2. I didn't mention the price of previous. I know that's probably something people will want to know. So the previous whiskey, the Vermouth, is 250 euros, and the Pomerol is 115. Because I'll probably get asked that at some stage.
You will, of course, check out Irish Malts and all good other stockists. But if you want to drop to your door, remember Irish Malts. Check in your email inbox if you are a subscriber at the end of the show.
There you go, Matt. You've got that
my contractual obligation.
You've got that nailed.
Yeah. Well, if anyone knows me, I fucking love Irish Malts. So I have, even if this wasn't their show, I'd still tell you where you can get all these whiskies.
Absolutely. So this whiskey, again, we talked about kind of the 16-year and how the components of the 16-year, the bourbon and sherry, essentially allowed whiskies from the Causeway collection to be possible. So this whiskey initially spent 6 years in aging in bourbon and sherry casks, and then we had the 4-year finish in the Pomerol wine casks. Calling it a finish is a little bit of an insult. Like 4 years, especially aging in Pomerol casks, is really significant because it is such a rich and such a full-bodied wine, and you really do get that coming through in the whiskey. Get a little bit of toasted wood coming in there as well.
You're getting very kind of tart like small berries. I'm trying to think kind of it's reminding me kind of hedgerow picking.
Yes. Are you thinking? No, you're not thinking like blackcurrants or something, or blackberries.
Not. Yeah, maybe more kind of. Maybe blackcurrants, but I'm thinking of something kind of a little bit more tart than that. But kind of maybe red currants area. I haven't taken a sip yet, so I'm gonna say Sláinte, and then I'll be able to. Maybe I'll be able to kind of dissect it a little bit better.
See, straight away I get that fresh apple, that crisp, fresh green apple, which is bringing it right back to the Bushmills DNA.
I was going to say there's a very, very recognizable, more so than the Vermouth.
Massively.
Very, very big footprint of the Bushmills DNA. And again, it's a very, very eloquent kind of layering of flavors. Even different to the 16 and very much the Vermouth, that kind of equilibrium of those different flavors, just kind of bringing it through, which is very nice, really nicely balanced. And what ABV did you say it was?
54.2. So again, it doesn't really overpower you. What I find with this is that kind of like ginger spice is just sitting kind of towards the tip and the back of my tongue a little bit, but at the same time, kind of intertwining with that, there's that lovely touch of vanilla sweetness in there as well from this.
And what did you say? Apologies. Was the price for this?
€115.
And it's an island exclusive.
Island of Ireland exclusive. Yeah, absolutely. So we released these two back at the very end of August. We always try to start with releasing within Ireland. Again, as I said, kind of just honouring and giving something special back to the home market. So yep, absolutely Ireland exclusives. Limited releases as well. So once they're gone, they're gone.
And I presume all the causeways, as they go into different markets, you're seeing, I suppose, a lot of that the kind of the interest and the popularity that you were saying before, that the excitement of what people wanted to see coming through as well. So, I'm
yeah,
sure.
100%. And I think it's just reminding people, like Bushmills really are the pioneers of single malt whiskey. It's what, as I said earlier, we're renowned for producing incredible single malts. And I think it was a really nice way to remind people that this is what we can do and what we do best, is produce great single malt whiskies. But the original, like the original, the Black Bush, obviously that they, as I think Seamus Lowry said this, and I thought it was a really good way of putting it, they keep the lights on. The things like the Causeway releases, the Pomerol, the Vermouth releases, that we can do it because we can, and it's showing people what we're essentially capable of, and the cask styles and cask finishes that we're sitting on. Gordon's just asked there, are there Causeway exclusives for other markets? 100% there are. And the most recent one, which was launched there about 3 weeks ago, was the Polish release, which was a tequila cask finish. And we've had other releases. We've had Australian releases, exclusives, Canadian, German, French as well. So yeah, 100%. You will obviously have to dig a little bit deeper for them because they are exclusives to those markets, to our other European markets, but they're there. But these are easier to get your hands on.
Well, I think it adds to the kind of fun of kind of traveling or scouring across Europe for those extra releases, you know.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've seen people do it as well. Like, I mean, I don't know, Matt, if you're in Friends of Bushmills, but like some of the guys in there have the full collection, which is impressive. They've done a lot of work to get that on their doorsteps for sure, but it is possible.
I mean, completists always hurt. Like when I look at completists portfolios or of what they have, it always hurts my wallet. Yeah, as Gordon says, it's like Pokemon. You gotta get them all. Yeah, that's how I go. That's how I go bankrupt, Gordon. I'm not saying they're not good investments, but there's some serious heavy hitters coming out of Bushmills. John Fleming wants to know: would you do a single cast release for Irish Malt or carry it off?
I saw that. Oh my goodness!
What if you just join forces, John? You can buy a 40-year-old cask out of Bushmills, and then you get half, and then John and Irish Malts get a half, and sure, look, we'll sell a third of it anyway through 3 Drams. I'd be fine.
If I had
Lauren, you make it happen there, will you?
If I had £1, €1 for every single time that someone asked me for a cask, I probably wouldn't need to go to work tomorrow.
You said it earlier. There's 400,000 casks sitting in Bushmill town, County Antrim. So it is.
Yeah, that's something as well. It's quite funny. I always get asked. People are like, surely you'll not miss one. If I just come up and take it, you'll not miss one. They're all registered. They're all accounted for. Mark my words.
Yeah, your warehouse keepers are going to be in trouble now if one goes missing.
They are, yeah. Chris and Alistair will have their heads on the line.
There you go. Well, listen, it's Paisley territory up there, isn't it? We'll just get onto them and see if we can wrangle a cast through the politicians instead.
What territory did you say?
Is it not Paisley territory up there? No.
Oh God. Well, we're not going to go down that route tonight, Matt. I think that might take a few more.
I just say that anyone who needs a cask desperately, donate to certain political parties. Maybe political favors will come. Who knows? I don't know how politics works. That's why I sell whiskey.
Don't go down that route. A lot of spare casks. Thing is, John, those spare casks, you never know. You never know what they might be going into. Certain releases for next year.
Exactly. Sam wants to know how much a full cask will be worth. That's a question about how long a piece of string is, Sam. Because you'll go from a couple of grand to a couple of $100,000 to maybe a little bit more. So it depends on what cask it is and who's asking.
Exactly. Like it's not something we do anymore. Is the kind of cask programs we did once upon a time, many years ago. But yeah, as you said, Matt, they can range in prices. I remember someone was saying, I think a cask was it 18 grand or something? It was insane. Like to buy into a cask program.
Even on the bulk market, when you're looking at, because obviously consumers looking to buy a cask get different access to people buying bulk liquid. Exactly. And I'm not talking about Bushmills bulk liquid because there's none of that floating around. But when you're looking at other products, like when you look at certain ages of casks, it might be 12 or 13 or 20 or 30 or 40 euro a liter of alcohol. But I've seen casks recently go for 1,200, 1,500 euro a liter. And that's just a liter of alcohol in a cask that could be 200, 300, 400, 500 liters. And it depends on what's in it, and it depends who wants it. Because if you want something bad enough, I'm sure that the price can get there. The go away price sometimes comes out.
I remember, obviously, this was before. I mean, I was literally a child at this point, so I've learned this through other means at the distillery. But our Millennium Malt, the 25-year that we obviously released in 2000, the distillery at that time actually approached companies to invest in casks, and I think at that time it was like $3,000 a cask, which was a lot of money back then. But that for now is not, you know, I mean, what they are nowadays is insanely higher than that. But yeah, like the malt bottles, like you see some of them that have people's names on them, they have companies' names on them and things like that as well. So yeah, it's just insane to think that that's the price it was. It's probably, like you say, quadruple that now, if not more.
I really liked, there was I was on a whiskey sales trip, and I was in a bar. I did a whiskey dinner in a bar in Milan, and it was a cool bar. It was really nice. It was kind of an unsuspecting bar. You wouldn't think it would be like kind of a whiskey haven. It was just kind of a nice bar. It was kind of, you know, Western European themed. And the bar owner was like, "Hey, do you want to try something cool? Do you want to try something cool from Bushmills?" And I was like, "All right, what do you have?" And he rocks out a bottle of Millennium Malt for his bar. And then he brought me to the certificate on his wall. And literally in the Millennium, he was like, he went as a bar owner in Milan and went to Bushmills and was like, "This is going to be a great investment." And he said it's one of his favorite things he's ever done in his life. But like, what bar in Ireland has one of those casks?
No, I know.
Bar in Milan, like,
that's insane. And you know what? It's amazing when you find gems like that as well, isn't it? Like, I remember I walked into a bar. I think this was about it wasn't last summer. It was this summer, start of this summer. And it was a random little bar in Hillsborough. And I walked in and I literally just went, "Oh my God." And the guy was like, "What?" And they had the 1608, the Bushmills anniversary. And it was it was about half full. And I was like, "That's so hard to find. Like, you have no idea what you're sitting on there." Obviously,
why did you tell them that before you ordered a glass? You tell them that once you polished off the bottle.
It's like, "I'll just drink the rest of this." Yes, thank you.
Yeah, how much? £4 a bottle? Sure, no. Or £4 a glass? Sure, no.
It's not really that rare. Yeah, no, give it to me. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Well, John Fleming is asking, is there anything you can tell us coming in the future that you're allowed to tell us? You can also tell us things you're not allowed to tell us. I won't tell. It'll stay between you and me, right? Listen, no one's going to say anything, right? Just you and me.
Tell you secretly, no one's going to hear.
Yeah, no one's going to hear. It's not like this is published.
The one thing I will say is that definitely, yes, I think the clue is in the name of the Causeway collection that we will absolutely be expanding into next year. That is about all I can tell you, but there are a few really exciting releases coming next year, which I think will be very welcomed and very, very sought after for sure. They're malts, and that's all I'm telling you.
20 years, 30 years.
Don't worry, John. We'll give you a call when we're allowed to. We will. Don't you worry. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing, like seeing some of the things that are in the pipeline for Bushmills, especially for years, as I think John, it was yourself said earlier. Everybody saw us as a sleeping giant. You know, this brand that produced beautiful whiskies, but there wasn't really anything outside of the core range. And it's so exciting now to know that there are new releases coming and to have that to look forward to and to share beautiful whiskies with people who love the brand as much as we do. So yes, keep your eyes peeled. There are definitely things down the line. Isn't it amazing how I'm like a politician. You can answer the question in a very indirect way, but not actually tell anyone anything.
So it should be shot. That's why there'll be a meeting. There'll be a meeting convened on Monday morning where it'll be a tribunal.
Too much information, Lauren. No, maybe we'll reconnect once we have the releases. Matt, we'll do a little 3 drams once we've got some new whiskies. It's hard to believe it was last April that we were on here with the Caribbean rum.
It was last April, and then we had, I can't even remember when Helen was on, and then we had We had our Sexton tasting as well. So
that was that August or September?
So I was thinking September. I was thinking it was similar-ish time to now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of exciting things coming out of Bushmills Town.
Absolutely. They really are.
Well, of course, remember to look in your email inbox there, guys, for anyone who is joining us tonight as a 3 Drams member, because you're going to get some lovely discounts straight to your email inbox from the guys at Irish Malts and 3 Drams. Do let us know if you have any questions for Lauren before we finish up, and we're happy to answer them. And of course, if you have questions after we finish up, we'll get to those too in the comments section after the fact. Lauren, I suppose, give us a quick recap again of everything we've tasted this evening. We had the 16 to kick off with.
We had the 16 to kick off with our core malt range, one of our classic whiskies in the core range, and then we went on to the Vermouth cask, the 2002 Vermouth cask, which of course is our first Irish exclusive of the Causeway collection for this year. And then we finished with the 2012 Pomerol cask. So 3 very different whiskies, especially when you compare and contrast the Pomerol and Vermouth, totally different. But again, just showcasing the best of Bushmills, our single malts, what we do and what we do best. So hopefully we enjoyed. Did anybody have a favourite? It's always interesting to know. Every tasting I do, I kind of gauge feedback, because it helps us kind of gauge what the favourite whiskies are, if it's more of the big, bold wine finishes or something else. So interesting to know.
Actually, for me, the Pomerol.
I was about to say, what did you think? Because that was the first time you tasted it.
It was. I have my little. I always keep half of each bottle now for the end. So I have 3 different glasses here. So I will. Well, I do. That's how I always taste through them. I have my 3 Tuas. I've got my, and tonight they're actually all platinum rimmed. I've about 40 different Tua glasses. I've got 2 platinum rims here, and then I've got a Whiskey Wednesdays platinum rim from New York. Tim and Whiskey Wednesdays in New York, a fantastic whiskey blogger and ambassador. But this is the one that I was waiting for me that I wanted to kind of tip back into. But I'm seeing Gary saying is 1, 2, 3 for him. Gordon saying it was the Pomerol for him. He wants a cask strength 16. Listen, Gordon, everyone wants a cask strength 16. There isn't even enough. For the last 8 years, there hasn't been enough 16 for the world. Never mind a cask strength one. But yeah, Dram Festation saying is Pomerol for him. But John McCarthy going for the Vermouth. I mean, it's 20 years old there, John. So I feel like you're onto a winner there. There's not going to be many people that are going to disagree with you too much.
I would have to agree with John. Out of this year's Causeway, the Vermouth was my standout as well. I just like, it was something different, because in other years it has been the wine finishes I've loved. Like, as I said, the Marsala cask was sensational. But this year it was the Vermouth, definitely. Something a little bit different.
Exactly. Well, of course, check out Irish Malts for all of your Bushmills needs. It is a run up to Christmas season, the big C word. The other C word, not the one you wouldn't there.
It's gone from COVID to Christmas now. Yeah, I guess that's good progress.
Exactly. I say Barry joining saying that the Pomerol for him, but the wife prefers a Vermouth. There you go. And again, very, very whiskey is subjective. You got the 312 here from Ken.
Interesting.
So for all your Bushmills needs, you can get these bottles shipped directly to your door. They will land where it is legal to do so. I will say that because there's some funny states you can't send it to if you live in dry areas and whatnot. Look, we can only do, well, I don't do anything, but Irish Malts can only do what is legal. But they'll get it right to your door. A couple of days, don't even worry about it. And apparently Carry Out and Irish Malt are doing a 40-year-old cast between them. So you heard it here first. Lauren's sorting it out. But
my wife really sees social media after this. We're like,
exactly. That was perfect time for John to say great entertainment. It was great entertainment.
Also, Matt, before you go, I'm going to embarrass you. Congratulations on your Icons of Whiskey Awards. Launched it to you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Congrats.
Yeah, just this evening.
You thought you were getting away with not mentioning that? Your phone's going to be about 500 notifications.
Yeah, I actually just got a picture, as I'm not at the Icons of Whiskey because I am here with you guys. And someone has my award and is currently drinking in the Palace Bar. It was just my
fantastic
my award and the Palace Bar background.
Fantastic.
So anyway, thank you, Lauren. I very much appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Well deserved, of course.
Well, thank you. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us. To those who watch back after the fact, because I know there's some people across the world that either can't be here when it's live or are literally in the wrong time zones. So they're asleep right now. And I know there's a few people. But yes, thank you all for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed our first big takeover like this with Bushmills. And as John Fleming says, Willie Ahern in the Palace Bar is mining it. I'm sure he is.
Alan's just said pass sums through the screen. I would if I could, Alan. I don't know if that would work.
No, that's how we put Lauren off the air. It'll just wreck her camera. But a very big thank you to everyone, and in particular the team at Irish Malt and 3 Drams for putting this all together. And of course, Lauren, to you and to the whole Bushmills team for making fantastic whiskies. A very big thank you and good night.
Sláinte.
Sláinte.